Sophia Rayne stood by the oversized windows of her late father's penthouse, clutching a letter in trembling hands. She had read the same lines at least 10 times, yet the words still struck her as if it were the first. "We regret to inform you that Rayne Real Estate Holdings has ceased operations." The letter spelled out the demise of a billion-dollar empire her father had meticulously built. The same empire that, in the public eye, had seemed too grand to fall. Her father's memorial was held at the family's once glittering estate. Swarms of reporters and disgruntled shareholders lined the gates. Dressed in a sleek black dress, Sophia approached with a heavy heart. Cameras flashed, capturing her every move, her eyes rimmed red from mourning and lack of sleep. She tried her best to maintain composure, but the questions hurled at her felt like daggers. How do you plan on compensating defrauded investors? Is it true that your father used illicit funds to hide debt? Are you aware of the allegations of fraud? Sophia's lips quivered. She didn't have answers. Her father had shielded her from the darker side of the business. In the final years before his passing, he'd grown distant, his once bright spirit clouded by secrets. Now, everyone pinned the blame on her. The heiress presumed to have inherited everything but apparently had inherited only the ruins. Despite the onslaught of reporters, she pressed forward into the ornate foyer where a somber eulogy was being given. A portrait of her father, Winston Rayne, loomed near the altar, draped with white roses. She sank into the front row, letting the minister's words wash over her. She felt guilt, sorrow, and a pang of betrayal. Why hadn't her father warned her about the precarious state of the company? When the service ended, she waited nervously for her fiancé, Adrian Holt, to arrive. He had promised to stand by her. In the weeks preceding, his texts had become sparse, his voicemails curt, but he'd sworn he would be at the funeral no matter what. People began filtering out. Shareholders approached her in fury, some demanding reimbursements, others cursing her father's name. She apologized over and over, feeling lost and alone. Still, Adrian did not appear. By the time she was able to break away from the growing crowd, the guests had thinned considerably. Only a few close family friends lingered. And still, there was no sign of him. Holding back tears, Sophia tried to call him, but it went straight to voicemail. She looked around anxiously, her breath catching in her throat. A loud voice from behind startled her. "Sophia, any final statement to the press?" A tall, wiry reporter thrust a microphone in her face. She stared blankly, lost for words, and quickly fled to her awaiting car. As she settled into the back seat, the door slammed shut behind her. She took a shaky breath and muttered, "Where are you, Adrian?" Right then, the radio in the car announced breaking news: Sophia Rayne's inheritance disappears in the wake of a massive fraud scandal. Anonymous sources confirmed that nearly all assets are frozen. She sank into the seat, her mind racing with panic. Cliffhanger echoed in her head. The fiancé who promised her forever had vanished on the very day she needed him most. Anxious to find Adrian, Sophia barreled out of the car the moment it pulled up to the towering penthouse she once called home. She had been living there with Adrian for months, a space that overlooked the city and boasted floor-to-ceiling windows. Normally, a doorman would greet her, but today, there was no one in the lobby. Only an eerie silence and a single moving truck stationed out front. She hurried inside, her heels echoing against the marble floors. In the elevator, her heart pounded so loudly she could barely hear the gentle hum of the machinery. Once the doors opened, she saw men lugging out boxes labeled with her name. It took her a moment to comprehend. These were her belongings. Her clothes, her books, her framed photos. Confusion and horror mingled in her chest. "What are you doing?" she demanded, panic rising in her voice. The movers exchanged awkward glances. One of them, an older man wearing a dusty cap, said quietly, "Miss, we were instructed to remove all items belonging to you." "By who?" she asked, her eyes blazing. "Mr. Adrian Holt," another mover answered. Sophia's stomach churned. She weaved between furniture and boxes until she reached the expansive living room, where Adrian stood with a clipboard, issuing orders like a business transaction. He barely glanced up as she approached. She noticed how poised he looked, dressed in a tailored suit, not a single hair out of place, as though he were heading to a board meeting rather than dismantling her life. "What is going on?" Sophia asked, voice quivering. "Why are you doing this?" Adrian finally turned, eyes colder than she'd ever seen. "Sophia, I can't be tied to this scandal," he said matter-of-factly. "You're toxic right now, and I can't let my own business be dragged down by the Rayne name." Her eyes widened in disbelief. "I just buried my father. The entire empire is gone. And you're throwing me out?" He took a step closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "I worked too hard to build my reputation. I can't risk my clients thinking I'm involved in any of your father's shady dealings." Tears threatened to fall, but she blinked them back. She didn't want to give him the satisfaction of seeing her completely break. "You promised you'd be there for me," she whispered. "Through thick and thin, Adrian." He straightened, not a hint of remorse on his face. "I didn't sign up for this," he said curtly. Then he glanced at the movers. "Are you almost done?" Betrayal rippled through her body as she watched the last box, labeled Sophia's personal, being carted out. The man she once pictured as her husband was discarding her like a liability. As if to twist the knife further, the news on the muted television in the corner flashed a headline: Sophia Rayne's inheritance lost. Fiancé denies involvement in financial scandal. There was a clip of Adrian giving a statement, disclaiming any ties to the Rayne finances. Sophia stared at the screen, her heart pounding in her ears. She could barely speak as she looked at him one last time. "So that's it? I'm out in the cold?" He shrugged. "You can stay with friends. I'm sure you'll figure something out." Without another word, she turned on her heel, feeling a heaviness in her chest she'd never experienced before. The final blow was the echo of his voice behind her: "Good luck, Sophia." With nowhere else to go, Sophia clutched her only remaining suitcase and made her way through the city streets. Dusk had fallen, painting the sky a bruised purple. She had sent messages to friends asking if she could crash with them, but they either claimed they were out of town or had no spare room. In reality, many were distancing themselves from her. Association with the Rayne name had become toxic. As her phone battery dwindled, she discovered a rundown shelter on the outskirts of the city. Neon graffiti adorned its outer walls, and the interior was dimly lit by flickering overhead lights. This place smelled of stale coffee and disinfectant. Still, it was warm, and it was open to those in need. A volunteer named Marta, an older woman with kind eyes, offered Sophia a spot on a thin mattress in the corner. That first night, she tossed and turned, haunted by the day's events. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Adrian's icy gaze, heard his dismissive tone. She'd awaken in a cold sweat, reminded of her sudden freefall from luxury to near destitution. Weeks passed in a blur of standing in line for meals, filling out job applications, and trying to figure out her next move. She sold what little designer items she had managed to keep. Her prized Louboutin heels fetched enough cash for basic necessities. The day she traded those red-soled symbols of her former life for a pair of worn sneakers was the day she realized she could no longer cling to her past. One damp, gray afternoon, on her way back from a fruitless job interview, Sophia saw a massive billboard. It featured none other than Adrian, smiling with a woman by his side, her former best friend, Elena. Their engagement photo, larger than life, looked down upon her. Her stomach churned with rage and heartbreak. She thought she could handle seeing Adrian move on, but with Elena? That was a knife twist. And it was as if the entire city wanted to remind her of the betrayal. She stumbled back to the shelter, tears stinging her eyes. As she slumped onto the small bed, she overheard whispers. A woman in the next cot was talking on the phone, her voice hushed yet urgent. "I found her. She's here. I'm certain it's her." A chill ran down Sophia's spine, though she tried to ignore it. Who could possibly be interested in her now? Outside, rain began to pelt the windows, each droplet a reminder of her battered soul. She closed her eyes, grappling with the memory of the billboard, the smug look on Adrian's face, and the hollow ache in her chest. Was this truly her rock bottom, or was there further to fall? A week later, just before dawn, Sophia was awakened by a volunteer gently shaking her shoulder. "Sophia, someone's here to see you," she said. Confused, Sophia sat up, pushing back strands of unruly hair. Visits were a rarity. She followed the volunteer into the cramped lobby. There, near the entrance, stood a tall man clad in a tailored black suit. His demeanor radiated quiet power, and even in the flickering fluorescent lights, he appeared calm and self-assured. She approached cautiously, her heart thrumming in her chest. "Miss Rayne?" he asked, voice low and measured. She nodded, trying to gather herself. His eyes were a deep shade of brown, and his presence exuded a mix of confidence and mystery. "Who are you?" "My name is Malik Vaughn," he said, extending a hand. "I was a colleague of your father." Sophia's mind raced. She had never heard of him. Still, something about him hinted at a connection to the shadowy underbelly of high finance. "I'm sorry, but I don't recall." He raised a palm, cutting her off politely. "No need to apologize. Your father's affairs were complex, and my involvement was discreet. But I'm here to offer you something." Sophia folded her arms protectively. "I've had my share of offers. Nothing comes without a price." His lips curved in a slight smile. "Fair point. What I'm proposing is an opportunity to rebuild. Not just your life, but your father's legacy." She arched an eyebrow, skeptical. "I have no money, no resources. My reputation is in tatters. Why on earth would you help me?" Malik paused, glancing around the rundown shelter. "Let's just say I have reasons of my own to see certain people fall, people who played a part in your downfall, too. I want to help you reclaim what's rightfully yours. In exchange, you'll help me expose those who brought your father's empire to its knees." Sophia's mind flashed with images of Adrian, Elena, the crooked shareholders, the humiliating press coverage. Could Malik be her ticket out of this nightmare? Yet, she had been betrayed so thoroughly before, trust now felt like a luxury. "What if I say no?" she asked quietly. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Then I leave you here, in this shelter, and we both watch as your enemies flourish. But I have faith you won't let that happen." He extended his hand again. Sophia swallowed hard, remembering how a handshake with Adrian had once felt like a promise of forever, only to become a betrayal. Still, her resolve hardened. This time, she would shape her own destiny. She placed her hand in his. "I won't just bring them down," she said softly. "I'll bury them." Sophia, or what remained of her, followed Malik into a sleek black car parked outside. The world blurred as they drove away from the shelter, her old life left behind like a forgotten chapter. Malik led her to a secure location, a spacious loft he used as a makeshift headquarters. The walls were lined with books on finance, coding, startup methodologies, and business psychology. She spotted thick binders labeled with cryptic titles like Project Dawn and Operation Phoenix. Over the next few months, her life became a rigorous training regimen. If Malik noticed her initial frailty, both physical and emotional, he didn't comment on it. Instead, he placed her on a strict routine, early morning sessions in finance theory, afternoons in coding and technology, evenings in strategic communication and public speaking. There were nights she fell asleep on a desk, only to be awakened by Malik's insistent knock at dawn, a new set of business articles in hand. Physically, she began to rebuild her stamina through grueling gym workouts. Malik was relentless yet patient, pushing her just enough to remind her of her own strength. She learned how to navigate corporate structures, how to dissect legal documents, and how to present herself in a way that commanded respect. With time, she abandoned her previous identity in more ways than one. One evening, Malik presented her with a forged passport and identification documents. "Sienna Black," he said, handing her the new IDs. Sophia Rayne must disappear, at least temporarily. Your enemies still watch for any sign of your return. She stared at the name. Sienna Black. It felt bold, untethered to the baggage of her old life. She accepted the documents, a surge of resolve coursing through her veins. If regaining her power meant sacrificing her birth name, so be it. With her new identity, she quietly launched a tech startup under the radar. Her coding lessons fueled the product's development. Her finance training helped secure silent investments through Malik's network. Step by step, she took calculated risks, often outsmarting seasoned professionals who underestimated her or assumed Sienna Black was just another upstart. At the end of an intense year, she gazed at her reflection in a mirror. The woman staring back was sharper, leaner, fiercer. Sienna Black no longer cowered in luxury's shadow, but forged her own destiny from the ashes of betrayal. And the final triumph of those early days? Her small company, codenamed Novatech, was quietly acquired by a larger conglomerate linked, unbeknownst to them, to Adrian Holt. A triumphant grin crossed her face. Adrian had no idea he was helping fund her comeback. But that was only the beginning. Clad in a crisp white blazer and fitted trousers, Sienna Black stepped onto the stage at a prestigious tech summit. The venue buzzed with energy. Entrepreneurs, investors, and journalists from all around the globe packed the auditorium. Since Novatech's acquisition, whispers about the mysterious founder had only grown. She had kept a low profile, refusing interviews and public appearances until now. As she approached the microphone, she felt a surge of excitement mixed with nerves. She was about to deliver her first major public speech. Though her heart pounded, she remembered Malik's words, "Power is in perception, let them see confidence, even if your knees shake." She spoke about innovation, about building from scratch, and the importance of resilience in the face of adversity. Polite applause erupted as she concluded. Then the event's host took the stage. Next up, we have a keynote from one of the most influential voices in tech today, Adrian Holt. Sienna's breath caught as Adrian strode to the platform. It was the first time she'd seen him in years, outside of billboards and tabloids. He wore a tailored navy suit, his hair immaculately styled, that trademark confident smirk still on his face. The crowd rose to their feet, showering him with applause. She moved to the side, ready to exit, when Adrian caught sight of her. His gaze lingered, curiosity flickering behind his eyes. After his talk, he approached her in the networking area. "Great speech," he said, offering a charismatic smile. "I'm Adrian." The swirl of voices in the crowded room seemed to fade for Sienna. She lifted her chin. "Sienna Black," she replied coolly, extending her hand. His eyes narrowed slightly, as though trying to recall if they had met before. "Sienna. Have we met?" he asked, confusion lacing his tone. She allowed herself a small, enigmatic smile. "Not yet," she replied, turning on her heel to disappear into the crowd. But just before she did, she made sure he noticed the subtle gold necklace around her neck, the same one he had gifted Sophia Rayne years ago, though he seemed unable to make the connection immediately. As she mingled with other attendees, she felt adrenaline coursing through her veins. This was the beginning of the real game. She was back, and Adrian Holt, the man who once left her in the gutter, had unknowingly extended a hand in friendship, or at least curiosity. Little did he know that the woman behind Sienna Black was the very ghost he had cast aside. In the days following the tech summit, Sienna Black became the hottest topic in tech circles. Bloggers and analysts scrambled to find any scrap of personal information. Who was she? Where did she come from? Her name, completely untraceable until a few years ago, only fueled the intrigue. Social media buzzed with conspiracy theories. She must be a foreign heiress, some speculated, others claimed she was a self-made genius. No one guessed the truth. Behind the scenes, Sienna orchestrated a series of rapid partnerships and strategic alignments. Her brand soared, overshadowing some of Adrian's companies. Meanwhile, Adrian found himself dodging subtle business roadblocks. A major influencer campaign he planned was derailed when a top sponsor inexplicably pulled out. A new tech product he was about to launch faced production hiccups as the manufacturer shifted to prioritize Sienna's brand. Adrian was growing frustrated, but he couldn't pinpoint the source of these disruptions. One afternoon, Sienna sat in her newly furnished office, a sleek, open-concept space with floor-to-ceiling windows. She tapped her foot impatiently, awaiting a report. Her new assistant, Lily, finally stepped in, a folder clutched in her hands. "Miss Black, here's the intel you requested," Lily said. "It's straight from the boardroom meetings at Holt Innovations." Sienna's eyes gleamed as she opened the folder, scanning the documents Lily had procured. Charts, graphs, internal emails, and projections all pointed to one thing: Adrian's empire was in a precarious position. A few more targeted strikes, and his fortress would start to crack. Lily shifted uneasily. "Are you sure we should keep doing this? I mean, if we're caught?" Sienna looked up, her expression resolute. "I appreciate your concern, Lily, but we have to proceed carefully. Remember, we're not just here to compete. We're here to correct an injustice that's been a long time coming." The assistant nodded, still uncertain but loyal. She stepped out, leaving Sienna alone with her thoughts. A wave of memories flooded her, the day Adrian threw her belongings out, the coldness in his voice. Every humiliation she faced in the media. And the funeral, his absence like a glaring wound. She tapped a pen against the desk, finalizing her next moves. Adrian would soon face the woman he once scorned. She had no intentions of mercy. Not yet, anyway. A week later, Sienna received an invite that made her pulse quicken, a private yacht event hosted by Adrian Holt himself. The invitation, written in elegantly embossed script, read, "Adrian Holt cordially invites Sienna Black to an exclusive networking soiree aboard the Royal Crest." The Royal Crest was a luxury yacht Adrian had recently acquired, and Sienna knew all too well it was the same yacht once used for lavish parties he'd thrown when she was still Sophia Rayne. The evening of the event, she arrived dockside in a black cocktail dress that accentuated her newly honed confidence. The gentle sway of the ship combined with the string quartet's melodies created an air of opulence. She scanned the crowd, noticing Adrian's fiancé, No, that had ended. Elena was nowhere in sight. Rumor had it they had broken off their engagement. Good, Sienna thought, a small smirk forming on her lips. As she sipped a glass of champagne, Adrian appeared at her side, eyes lingering on her. "I'm glad you came," he said, guiding her away from the chatter. "I wanted to talk business, maybe explore some collaboration?" She feigned interest. Collaboration? Between Holt Innovations and Black Incorporated? Intriguing. Adrian's gaze swept across the deck, ensuring no one was eavesdropping. "Listen, Sienna, there's something about you I can't quite figure out. I feel like we have," he paused, searching for the right word. "History, somehow." Her heart pounded at the notion. She studied his face, recalling the way he once looked at her with love, then with betrayal. But outwardly, she maintained a cool composure. "Perhaps in another life," she teased. "But in this one, let's focus on the future." At some point during the night, Adrian stepped away to address a group of investors, and Sienna seized the moment. She slipped below deck, venturing into the yacht's private quarters until she found the lounge where she and Adrian had once shared a tender moment as Sophia and fiancé. Her eyes flicked to a small hidden panel by the bar, a place where, years ago, they had carved A+S forever into the wood. She opened it, and sure enough, there were the initials, faint but still visible. She let her fingers trace over them, remembering the laughter and the promise that love would always triumph. Then she took a small knife from her clutch and slowly scraped away the letters. With each scrape, she felt a strange catharsis, erasing that naive vow. Cliffhanger, she stood, tears threatening to form, but she blinked them away. This was her battlefield now, and sentimentality would only weaken her resolve. Adrian's yacht party had given Sienna all the intel she needed. She had gleaned the key players in Adrian's latest business ventures and identified the linchpins of his financial networks. It was time to strike. In the weeks that followed, she orchestrated a clandestine takeover. Using shell corporations and third-party investors, she quietly acquired substantial shares in Adrian's existing companies. Parallel to this, she announced a competing platform, OrbitLink, that boasted a groundbreaking approach to cloud collaboration and data security, directly challenging Adrian's flagship product. Tech critics hailed it as the next big disruptor. Board members at Holt Innovations grew jittery. Adrian's anxious face began appearing in tabloids with headlines like "Adrian Holt's Empire Under Siege?" He held a press conference to reassure his shareholders that all was well. Yet behind closed doors, panic grew. Contracts were slipping through his fingers, and the rival platform, OrbitLink, soared in popularity. One crisp autumn evening, Sienna donned a sleek gown to attend a prestigious charity gala at the Grand Lumiere Hotel. As she circulated among the elite, she spotted Adrian deep in conversation with a disgruntled-looking investor. Suddenly, the investor stormed off, leaving Adrian flustered. He locked eyes with Sienna across the room. She couldn't hide her satisfied smirk. Moments later, Adrian approached her, trying to maintain decorum. "My top investor pulled out tonight," he said, voice tense. "Word is, you were behind it." Sienna arched an eyebrow, swirling the champagne in her glass. "Business is business," she replied with a disarming smile. "Perhaps they saw a better return on investment with me." His jaw tightened, yet he maintained a forced smile. "You play hardball, Ms. Black." "I learned from the best," she said, stepping away to greet another guest. The entire evening, Sienna felt an undercurrent of thrill. She was positioning her pieces on the board, moving them with meticulous precision. Adrian had no clue how much deeper her plans ran. But she knew, in the end, a single decisive move would topple his king and leave him cornered. And with each small victory, she felt one step closer to avenging her father and her own lost innocence. The world's eyes turned to Sienna Black when she announced a keynote speech at a massive tech conference, rumored to be reminiscent of a TED Talk but on an even grander stage. Tickets sold out in hours, and millions more prepared to watch the live stream. The anticipation was electric. The day arrived, and she walked onto the stage wearing a simple black dress and minimal jewelry. A hush fell over the colossal auditorium. The spotlight caught the subtle determination in her eyes as she began. "My name is Sienna Black, and I want to share a story with you. It's about starting over, and about secrets that shape who we become." For the next 30 minutes, she spun a tale, carefully crafted to hint at heartbreak and rebirth without revealing her true identity. She spoke of betrayal, redemption, the power of resilience, and the miracle of second chances. It was raw, vulnerable, and unapologetically motivating. Her words transcended the typical corporate jargon, striking emotional chords in the audience. When she finished, the crowd erupted in thunderous applause. Across social media, her name trended instantly, with countless posts quoting her lines. Memes popped up with her face, championing the notion of personal reinvention. Adrian watched the live stream from his office. He noticed small but crucial details, the passion in her voice, the slight tremor in her hand when she spoke of loved ones lost, and the fleeting expression of pain on her face. Something about it jolted his memory. After the speech concluded, he scrolled through an article featuring old photos of Sophia Rayne. The headline read, "Where is Sophia Rayne now?" He studied Sophia's features, her eyes, her jawline. Then he replayed Sienna's talk, pausing on a close-up. The resemblance became undeniable. As the screen froze on Sienna's face, Adrian felt his stomach twist in recognition. Was Sienna Black actually Sophia Rayne? The very woman he had left behind? His hand shook as he turned off the monitor. If it was true, she had just executed one of the greatest comebacks, and he was at ground zero of her revenge. Night fell over the city, its skyline a glittering array of possibility and danger. Adrian couldn't sleep. He paced his penthouse, the same penthouse that once belonged to Sophia Rayne. He had purchased it at an auction, remodeling it to suit his tastes. Now, Its high ceilings felt suffocating, each echo of his footsteps a reminder of the ghosts lurking in its walls. At midnight, he made a decision. He had to confront Sienna, Sophia, directly. This cat-and-mouse game had gone on long enough. The following morning, he sent an urgent message asking to meet. Much to his surprise, she agreed. They decided on a discreet location, an upscale lounge that catered to tech elites, known for its strict privacy policy. When Adrian arrived, he spotted her in a corner booth, swirling a glass of amber liquid. Sienna, illuminated by the lounge's soft golden light, stared at him coolly. "You wanted to see me?" she asked as he slid into the seat across from her. He leaned forward, gaze intense. "You're her, aren't you?" Sophia Rayne. She took a slow sip, savoring his discomfort. "If I am, does that matter?" Her voice dripped with a calm venom. Adrian inhaled sharply. "It matters to me. I need to explain. If I had known the truth back then, about what really happened with your father, I would have." She let out a short, bitter laugh. "You would have stayed? Forgiven me?" "Adrian, you threw me out the moment you sensed trouble. Don't insult my intelligence now by acting like it was some misunderstanding." He gripped the table's edge, knuckles white. "I was under immense pressure, Sophia. My investors threatened to pull their funding if I was tied to the Rayne scandal. I had to protect." She cut him off. "Yourself." "Yes, I know that story all too well." There was no empathy in her tone, only the memory of his betrayal. A tense silence lingered, thick with unspoken accusations. Adrian finally spoke, voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry." Sienna leaned in, her expression colder than ice. "Forgiveness isn't part of the business plan," she said, echoing the line from her old life. Then she rose from her seat, leaving him there, drowning in regret. Barely an hour passed before the SEC's official statement blared across the financial news networks. A federal investigation into Adrian Holt's companies is underway, prompted by new, anonymous evidence. Adrian felt the blood drain from his face. He realized that Sienna's words weren't just personal, they were part of a meticulously engineered downfall. As the SEC investigation deepened, Holt Innovation's stock plummeted. Day after day, negative press battered Adrian's reputation. Shareholders sold in a panic, and the once booming empire he had built began to crumble like a sandcastle at high tide. Tabloids relished the story, from billionaire to bankrupt? Adrian Holt on the brink. Those who once vied for his attention now distanced themselves, unwilling to be tainted by the specter of federal probes. Even Elena, his fiancé-turned-ex, was spotted vacationing in the Bahamas with a Hollywood producer, making it clear she'd long since abandoned the sinking ship. At night, Adrian sat in the penthouse, the bright city lights mocking him through the window. Stress etched new lines into his face, and the once confident glint in his eyes faded. He tried to text Sienna. Each message went unanswered. He tried to call, she never picked up. Meanwhile, in a glass tower across town, Sienna watched these developments with measured calm. She had spent countless nights dreaming of this very scenario, Adrian's downfall. Now that it was here, she almost felt numb. During a private meeting at Malik Vaughn's office, she reviewed the final acquisitions needed to complete her silent takeover. Among them was the very penthouse Adrian lived in. "You understand what purchasing this means, right?" Malik asked carefully. "You'd be reclaiming your old home." She nodded. Poetic, isn't it? Together, they signed the paperwork. Adrian was oblivious to the fact that his penthouse was now under Sienna's control, an irony that tasted sweet, albeit tinged with the lingering bitterness of the past. By week's end, the media had a field day reporting that Adrian Holt's accounts were frozen, his assets seized or sold off. Sienna scrolled through the headlines, her eyes scanning article after article. She expected euphoria, a feeling of vindication. But all she felt was a heavy sense of finality, a chapter closing in the story of her heartbreak. Officially, the penthouse belonged to a holding company connected to Sienna. Unofficially, it was hers. Late one evening, she decided to step inside for the first time since Adrian had thrown her out. The elevator ride to the top floor felt like traversing a lifetime of memories. Her heart pounded as the doors slid open, revealing the lobby with its marble floors and modern decor, Adrian's decor. She stepped into the expansive living area and flicked on the lights. Everything was eerily pristine, yet it felt foreign, like stepping into a stranger's home. She found herself drawn to the master bedroom. The plush bedding, the soft lighting, none of it was the same as the environment she once knew. Adrian had stripped away any remnants of her old life. In the ensuite bathroom, there stood a tall mirror framed in gold, the same mirror she had once gazed into, tears streaming down her face on the day she discovered she was being kicked out. She remembered the heartbreak, the overwhelming sense of loss. Now, she stared at her reflection, shoulders squared, chin high. Her phone buzzed. A voice note. She recognized the number as belonging to Adrian's mother. Though they had rarely spoken, she felt a pang of nostalgia for the time when his family considered her practically engaged. Pressing play, she heard the woman's trembling voice, Sienna, I'm so sorry. Adrian's ruined now, and I see the truth of everything. I should have believed you back then. A tear slipped down Sienna's cheek. She bit her lip, letting the phone fall to her side. The apology brought some closure, but it also reopened old wounds. She found a moment of peace in the knowledge that someone on Adrian's side finally saw the injustice she'd endured. She tore her gaze from the mirror. No more tears, she told herself. She was here to reclaim her legacy, not drown in memories. A month later, a much-awaited documentary on Winston Rayne's empire premiered on a major streaming platform. The film, titled Shadows and Fortunes, The Rise and Fall of Rayne Real Estate, promised unprecedented access to internal documents, interviews, and behind-the-scenes turmoil. It was hyped as a revelation for those curious about the real story behind the Rayne collapse. Sienna settled on her couch, tension coiling in her muscles as she pressed play. The documentary began with images of her father in his heyday, accepting awards, shaking hands with city officials, championing affordable housing initiatives. Interviews with former employees praised his vision and generosity. But as the narrative progressed, it unveiled the extent of the fraud that had been orchestrated, not solely by Winston Rayne, but by a group of trusted associates, including Adrian Holt. Her breath caught in her throat as the documentary unearthed emails and transactions that showed how Adrian had conspired with rogue board members to siphon funds, leaving the company vulnerable to collapse. A former Rayne accountant appeared on screen, stating, "We tried to warn Mr. Rayne about who he was doing business with, but he wouldn't listen." Adrian Holt was charming, he knew how to manipulate situations to his benefit. By the time Winston realized the betrayal, it was too late. Rage burned in Sienna's chest. She paused the documentary, her eyes brimming with tears of anger and sorrow. Her father might have had his own faults, but Adrian had acted as the final nail in the coffin of Rayne Real Estate. Within hours, the internet exploded. Social media was flooded with outrage, calling for Adrian to be held accountable. Talk shows debated whether he should face legal consequences beyond the SEC investigations. A class action lawsuit formed overnight, led by a group of former Rayne shareholders who now had proof that Adrian played a key role in the empire's downfall. Sienna watched it all unfold, a swirl of emotions raging within her. She felt vindicated, but also mournful for how her father's legacy had been twisted. Yet one thing was clear, the world now knew Adrian for what he truly was. A crisp morning brought an unmarked envelope to Sienna's doorstep. Inside was a handwritten letter from Adrian, words scrawled in a messy hurry. It begged for a private meeting, pleading for a chance to make amends and to explain everything. She almost tossed it in the trash, but curiosity got the better of her. So, she arranged for them to meet at an empty event hall after hours. She arrived early, setting up a hidden camera in the corner, ensuring she would record every word he spoke. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Adrian slipped in, looking haggard and thin. His once impeccable style had given way to rumpled clothes and a haunted look in his eyes. When he spotted Sienna, he approached with caution, like a man approaching a sleeping lion. "Sophia," he began, voice cracking. She crossed her arms, stance unyielding. "It's Sienna now," she corrected. His eyes were bloodshot, and his hands shook. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I was greedy, selfish. I got involved with the wrong people. I never meant for you to lose everything. I was desperate to climb the ladder." Sienna's jaw tightened. "Then why sabotage my father's empire? Why betray me?" He sank onto a nearby chair, burying his face in his hands. "I owed massive debts. I told your father I'd invest ethically, but the pressure was too much. I was manipulated, blackmailed. Next thing I knew, I was in too deep." He looked up, eyes glistening. "I didn't know how to stop. By the time I realized what I'd done, I was in bed with devils who demanded even more. I saw a chance to escape by cutting ties with you and your father." She sniffed, tears threatening to spill, but she held them back. "So you sold us out," she said, voice trembling. "Yes," he whispered. "I was a coward." Sienna breathed heavily, letting the silence hang. She glanced at the hidden camera, ensuring it caught every word. Then she turned back to him. "You'll atone for this," she said, her voice cold. He nodded, defeated. Within hours, the footage went viral. The recorded confession ignited a firestorm of public outrage. By morning, Adrian's phone blew up with calls from journalists, lawyers, and law enforcement. The final blow came when authorities arrived at his penthouse and placed him under arrest for fraud, sealing the downfall he had so carefully tried to evade. 2 days after Adrian's arrest, Sienna Black shocked the world by announcing an exclusive, tell-all interview with one of the largest media networks. Speculation ran wild. What secrets will she reveal? The nation tuned in at prime time to see the woman who had captured headlines with her meteoric rise. Sienna arrived at the studio, wearing a muted gray suit and minimal makeup. She glanced at her reflection in the dressing room mirror, remembering how once upon a time, she had cowered before cameras. Tonight, she was determined to own her narrative fully. The interview set was minimalistic: a sofa, 2 chairs, a tasteful coffee table. The renowned interviewer, known for hard-hitting questions, welcomed her on air. "Ms. Black," he began, "you've become a symbol of resilience, but also a figure shrouded in mystery. Why speak out now?" Sienna took a deep breath. "Because the world deserves to know that I wasn't always Sienna Black." A stunned hush swept across the live studio audience and presumably millions of viewers at home. She continued, voice steady yet charged with emotion, "My birth name was Sophia Rayne. Some of you may recall that I lost my father, Winston Rayne, and my entire inheritance in a scandal 6 years ago." Gasps rippled through the audience. The interviewer leaned forward, hands clasped. "You're Sophia Rayne? The same Sophia Rayne rumored to have vanished after the collapse of Rayne Real Estate?" She nodded. "Yes. I reinvented myself as Sienna Black to rebuild my life without the shadow of that scandal. Every step I took, every risk, was to honor my father's legacy and hold those who destroyed it accountable." The interview became a whirlwind of confessions and revelations. By the end, her social media following skyrocketed to over 50 million, with hashtags like #ComebackQueen and #SiennaBlack trending globally. Fans flooded the comments sections. "You're an inspiration. The queen of second chances." Sienna left the studio with a trembling sense of closure. The truth was finally out. She had faced her past, emerged stronger, and let the world see who she really was. The dust from her explosive revelation hadn't even settled when Sienna received an unexpected invitation. A global female entrepreneurship summit was being organized in London, and she had been asked to chair it. The event would feature influential women from tech, finance, and politics, all under one roof, discussing the future of female-led ventures. Sienna flew to London with Malik Vaughn by her side, their professional partnership evolving into a profound friendship. The summit took place in a grand hall teeming with delegates, speakers, and media. Her face adorned the event posters. Attendees lined up to meet the illustrious Sienna Black, once Sophia Rayne. On the second day, she stepped on stage to deliver the keynote address. The crowd roared, applauding her success story, her bravery in overcoming adversity. She spoke passionately about mentorship, fair access to capital, and the crucial importance of inclusive leadership. Midway through her talk, she paused and said, "I want to bring someone special on stage." Malik Vaughn, who had been seated in the front row, rose with a mixture of pride and surprise. He joined her at the podium. The auditorium lights glimmered off the sleek black architecture behind them. "This man believed in me when no one else did," she said, voice echoing. "Without his guidance and unwavering support, I wouldn't be standing here." Malik gave a humble nod. "It was always about your potential, Sienna, or should I say, Sophia. I just gave you the roadmap." He handed her a small, ornate key engraved with the letters RLF. Sienna turned it in her hand, puzzled. "What's this?" "It's the key to the Rayne Legacy Foundation," he announced, and a collective gasp spread among the audience. Cameras flashed as Sienna's eyes widened in astonishment. "We're launching it together, to honor your father's dream, reimagined for a new era." Cheers and applause erupted from the crowd, many on their feet. Sienna blinked back tears, overwhelmed by the moment. She pictured her father's face, recalling how passionately he'd spoken of helping disadvantaged communities. This was her chance to turn pain into purpose. Sienna returned stateside with renewed vigor, diving headfirst into the establishment of the Rayne Legacy Foundation. Its mission, to uplift underprivileged youth through technology, finance, and entrepreneurship programs. Working in tandem with local communities and global sponsors, the foundation aimed to create scholarship opportunities, mentorship, and hands-on training. At the official launch gala, she stood on a stage decorated with images of her father, small glimpses of Winston Rayne smiling as he cut ribbons and inaugurated community centers. The crowd murmured with excitement, among them were donors, beneficiaries, and media outlets. When Sienna stepped forward to speak, her voice trembled slightly with emotion. "This foundation is named for my father, but it's powered by all of you. By your dreams and your drive. I once lost everything, but sometimes, it's in our darkest moments that we discover the brightest paths." Just then, two small figures emerged from backstage, a pair of twins, a boy and a girl, each about 6 years old, shyly holding hands. The audience looked on in curiosity, then erupted into affectionate whispers when the children made their way to Sienna, hugging her. They were her children, adopted quietly from an overseas orphanage, away from media scrutiny. "This is Aaron and Ava," she introduced, her smile radiant. "They reminded me that no matter how broken our past, there's always room for hope and love. And in building a better world for them, I hope we can build a better world for all our children." Tears glistened in the eyes of many attendees. Cameras flashed, capturing the poignant moment. Sienna looked down at the twins, feeling the weight of a promise. She would ensure that they, and kids like them, would never face the hardships she had endured. In that instant, as the applause thundered, she felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. Money and power were fleeting, but shaping lives and giving back to those who needed it, this was her true legacy reclaimed. Adrian Holt was convicted of fraud and several financial crimes, facing a multi-year prison sentence. In his cell, stripped of the trappings of wealth and influence, he began scribbling on loose sheets of paper. Over time, those scribbles turned into a full-length memoir that circulated among the prison library. Eventually, he found a small publisher willing to distribute it under the provocative title The Woman Who Beat Me. The book became a minor internet sensation. Some took interest because they wanted more gossip on the downfall of a once-celebrated billionaire. Others found themselves strangely moved by the confessional style in which Adrian recounted his treacherous journey. He even wrote about the day he met Sophia Rayne, his growing obsession with wealth, and the catastrophic decisions that led him to betray her. Sienna never bothered to read it. She saw the headlines in passing, reviews, critiques, sensational angles, but she refrained from giving Adrian any further power over her life. She had worked too hard to get this far, to reclaim her soul from the wreckage of the past. Meanwhile, she poured her heart into the Rayne Legacy Foundation and her rising business empire. She built scholarships, launched incubators for young entrepreneurs, and traveled worldwide to speak about ethical leadership. The media occasionally tried to bait her into commenting on Adrian's memoir, but she always responded with calm deflection or changed the subject. Her silence spoke volumes. By not acknowledging Adrian's confession, she showed that her life's purpose no longer revolved around his betrayal or downfall. She had found redemption in growth, in mothering her twins, in guiding the next generation. While many expected her to gloat or indulge in schadenfreude, she chose the higher path, one of quiet grace. A final piece of news made waves. Netflix had announced a limited series based on her life. Rumors circulated that top Hollywood actresses were vying to portray Sienna Black, the unstoppable comeback queen. The world remained fascinated, but Sienna continued forward, eyes fixed on the future, leaving the ashes of revenge behind her. The sun dipped low over a tranquil stretch of beach, painting the sky in washes of orange and lavender. Sienna walked barefoot along the shore, the gentle roar of ocean waves in her ears. She paused near a spot where, once upon a time, she had cried her heart out as a disgraced heiress with no future in sight. Now, she was older, wiser, and infinitely stronger. Her twins played in the sand, laughing as they built driftwood castles. Nearby, a few security personnel kept a respectful distance, fully aware of her high-profile status. Yet, at this moment, she felt stripped of all titles, no longer the billionaire tech mogul, the scandal-ridden heiress, or the shadowed figure seeking revenge. She was simply a mother, a survivor, and a woman who had taken back her life. Closing her eyes, she felt the ocean breeze on her face, heard the distant squawks of seagulls. A wave of gratitude flowed through her. For the betrayals that had spurred her growth. For the pain that had lit a fire within her. And for the hope that had guided her through it all. She whispered into the sea breeze, "Thank you, for leaving me." Those words carried no bitterness now, only a profound recognition that if Adrian hadn't betrayed her, she might never have discovered the depths of her own resilience. She might never have reinvented herself as Sienna Black, might never have founded the Rayne Legacy Foundation, or become a beacon for others seeking redemption. A single tear slid down her cheek, but it was a tear of joy. The final shot, if this were a movie, would be of Sienna walking back to her children, the sun casting a warm glow around them. In a title card across the screen, the final quote would read, "Sometimes the people who break you are the ones who build your empire." And with that, her story, equal parts heartbreak, vengeance, and ultimate triumph, was complete. The end.